Attention, please. Eastern Airlines Flight 19, now ready for departure.
Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering the vacation kingdom of the world.
There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. We call it Epcot. Will be our experimental prototype city of tomorrow.
Welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, taking you back to the vacation kingdom of the world, the way it was, and the way it is in your memories.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, the official podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society. This is episode 85, where we'll be taking you back to the Mickey Mouse Revue and talking about its two locations where it played for many years. And I'm your host, Todd McCartney, and sitting in with me, as always, for this episode is coming in from Ohio, back to school, JT Kuzier. The most wonderful time of the year, as some of those commercials say, right?
It is for the people that send their kids off to us, I think. That's for sure. But yeah, we're back. I like going to extinct attractions that I've never even... I wasn't even born when this left the park, so...
I never got to see it. I think Hal is probably the only one here that actually got to see it, but we'll find out more details later.
Yeah.
And speaking of Hal, let's introduce him. Welcome to the show, Hal. This is your episode, written, produced, edited, and created by Hal Bowers. So how you doing tonight, Hal? From
Good.
From your local manatee preservation society right in your own backyard now.
That's right. We got them hanging out all the time.
Can we send you some cabbage or romaine or anything?
You're not supposed to molest them, so I don't go and feed them or give them water or anything. Which but we just enjoy looking at them.
Give them water where they on land.
I know there's this thing. I don't know what the deal is, but if you turn on like a fresh water source,
yeah,
it's like they will come over to it and just like sit there and kind of like drink out of the hose.
Yeah,
really?
As it drips down into the water.
Well, I suppose if you're drinking salt water all your life, a nice fresh glass of Tampa water from the Tampa water system would be wonderful.
We're brackish here, so I guess the fresh water is a nice change for them.
Interesting. Yeah. And wearing his Orange Bird shirt tonight, coming in from Philadelphia area, Mr. Brian P. Miles. How are you, Brian?
I am also attracted to fresh water as opposed to brackish water. So if you turn it on in your yard, I may show up and drink it.
Brian's just out there on all fours at the sprinkler.
I'm doing well, and it's great to see and hear everyone.
That's right. We have all been very busy getting ready for PhilharMagic coming up in fall of 2023 here in just a few short weeks. We're approaching almost the 30-day mark, which is hard to believe. So if you're listening and you're coming to PhilharMagic, can't wait to see you. If you're listening, we do not have any more seats left, so I'm sorry to report that, but we're very excited that we've got a complete sellout as always. But it's going to be an awesome time. So the team here is very busy, but we wanted to get another episode in the books before we get to PhilharMagic because we are really in crunch time now in the next 30 days putting this all together. So, but before we start, we always go over to the listener mailbag. And JT, what'd you have? You were really busy last month with the DVC feedback. So what did we have this month coming in?
So I dug back a ways because I wanted to get into some people we might have missed, or I like.
So it's not feedback on DVC feedback.
No, this is just right out of the good old fashioned mailbag, sure. And if you're somebody that sent us a message and you didn't get on, well, this might be you. This first one here is from November of last year. This is from Julius. Julius has a question, and I'm sure you guys can talk about this, and I'm kind of staying on brand here for some things that are upcoming. Julius is curious about the radar dishes you'd see, the big satellite dishes at Epcot.
Oh yeah, those were grand, weren't they?
Wanted to know what they were used for and when they were taken down, like what data actually came and went through these. Just kind of curious on the point of them. Was it all for show, like Hollywood Studios? Was it a fake camera?
Fake camera, right?
Yeah, this is why I think you guys love Epcot so much, because as far as I know, they were real, weren't they?
They were. They were. If I recall correctly, and I know Hal will correct me if I'm wrong here, they were real satellites. I believe there were two of them. They were tuned into a number of different channels. And over by Smart One, there was a communication area where you could see some different television channels being pulled in via satellite. I can't recall if they had stock market updates or news. How you might remember it better.
Yeah.
It was over by Smart One, though, if I recall
It
correctly.
was over by the future. It was part of the Future Choice Theater
Yes.
pre-show area.
Right.
As you're waiting to go in, and they
That's
had
right. Smart One was over.
you could see news from around the United States and from around the world, which at that time via satellite, which at that time was still relatively new. And then those satellites dishes could also be used as uplinks besides the downlinks, so that if you filmed a show at Walt Disney World and you needed to upload it to satellite in order to broadcast it, they could do that for you there as well.
Is that how we're broadcasting Retro Magic coming up? Or
That is
out there?
That's how we're gonna do it. We're gonna just drag a long ass cable over to
the yacht club.
Yep.
I knew that everything was strategic in this location that Brian chose.
We meant to do that. It's a shortcut.
The question is, did you know anyone growing up who had one of those large satellites in their backyard? Because I did.
Gosh, remember those? They were like 4 feet wide.
Yeah.
4 or 5 feet. They're usually black, like a mesh. Sometimes
That's
they
exactly,
were hard.
Frank Fazio, who I went to high school with, was a year ahead of me in high school. Loved going over to Frank's house because they had this giant satellite in their backyard that his dad obviously used to watch, I don't know, Chicago Blackhawks games directly from a Chicago feed or something like you always had this thing like they could watch anything. I don't ever remember watching anything at Frank's house because in Frank's basement, they had a real Miss Pac-Man machine and like a full like air hockey table. And I feel like he had more than just Miss Pac-Man down there, but
Frank's parents had some disposable income.
We were only ever in Frank's basement that I remember. I don't ever remember watching anything on TV there.
I was going to say the whole deal with those satellite dishes is that if you could aim it at the satellite, and when they first came out, there was nothing to block you from being able to receive the signal.
No scrambling or anything.
So you could get HBO. So you could literally get any channel, anything on it for free.
Wait a second. Back then, there was no was there like a satellite in the air beaming TV to people?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it wasn't beaming to people. It was beaming from station to station for rebroadcasting over the cable.
Okay, so you were...
Yeah, you were intercepting the signal.
I see.
So HBO was transmitting it to a satellite, which would then take it down to your local cable company, who would then take it and put it in the cable and shove it to your house. So you're going around the cable company by patching into that directly.
So basically, this was honey, this is going to pay for itself in like 2 years type investment.
Yeah, exactly. All we need to do is have a 4-foot satellite dish in the backyard.
I recall them being way bigger than 4 feet.
I mean, they seemed
6
huge,
or 8 feet across.
I was at least 4. Maybe they were closer to 6 to 8, but they were big. And you drive by, and you'd see people in their backyard.
Now, did you have to move it? Like okay, I got HBO this way. Did I have to take tweak it south to get another station?
You would have to aim at different satellites depending on which thing you wanted to pick up.
What a job.
Now, let's dial the clock back a little further. I remember we had some friends. We had cable TV, and then they moved. And they moved to this location. It was a little more rural, and they didn't have cable TV yet. So we went over to their house once, and they didn't have a satellite dish, but they had an aerial on the roof. And he's like, oh, hold on. We have to turn the dial to just between E and S, between east and south, to pick up that station. And he would sit there. They had the controller next to the TV, and you'd turn the knob, and a motor up on the roof would rotate the aerial antenna to pull in the best thing.
We had that when I was a kid.
You had that too, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first thing, and then satellite was the same thing where you had to
just so you know, all of this we're describing was part of the plot of Wayne's World. where they were going to aim the satellite at
That's right.
Frankie Sharp's limousine so that he could see Tia Carrere's band, Crucial Taunt, play and want to come and sign them to a record contract.
Okay. First, I'll access a secret military spy satellite that's in a geosynchronous orbit over the Midwest. Then, I'll ID the limo by the vanity plate Mr. Big and get its approximate position. Then, I'll reposition the transmitter dish in the remote truck to 17.32 degrees east. Hit West Star 4 over the Atlantic, bounce the signal down into the Azores, up to Comstat 6, beam it back to SATCOM 3 transmitter number 137, and down to the dish in the back of Mr. Big's limo. It's almost too easy.
I'm actually looking at Google Maps here, like Google Satellite View, to see if the old satellite is still in their backyard.
Oh,
Oh
your
my
friend.
God.
Fazio's house. Because, like,
So
you know, who digs it out? Like, for what purpose do you have to rip it out until you sell the place?
and apparently it was something called C-band, I guess is what it was. I'm sure we have a listener out there that can come on next month and give us a
Well,
full
it seemed like in the
dissertation.
90s there was always one of those randomly in a backyard, and usually parked next to it was like an early 80s Camaro or Trans Am that was rotting away, like just
And
the typical.
and the people almost very likely owned a reptile in a glass tank.
I
you
know,
know,
just a specific type, but yeah, that's
All right, here you go for it. So in 19 this is amazing, guys. In 1979, the satellite dish was listed in the Neiman Marcus catalog.
Oh,
How much do you think? Now that was way back, and this is the open air C-band, was wireless signals that would pick up. In 1979, it was $36,000 as
Wow.
get
advertised.
out of here.
By 1981, it was down to $3,000, and 1985, the price came down another half to $1,500. In just 6 years, it came down from 36,000 to 5,000.
Okay, hold on. I got to run the inflation calculator on $36,000.
Yeah.
See.
Well,
It's
even
basically-
I got the 85 one at 1,500. That's equivalent to about $4,200 today, which is
There you go.
to get like 4 free channels. That's quite a bit.
Did you say it was $32,000?
It's 30,
36.
36.
$36,000 in
Yeah,
1979.
1979.
Okay,
It's
36.
like a house.
That was $148,000 today.
That's just Gordon Gekko bought it, and that was it.
Jeez.
So this is interesting. There was a salesman in Columbia, South Carolina, and he said that a certain percent of those people who bought dishes in the early days were the daredevil types. They got a thrill out of taking something away from HBO.
Sure.
Oh.
You knew it wouldn't last. In fact, there's a screenshot here that said when they started scrambling, it would say, "Good evening, HBO. $12.95 a month? No way."
Oh, that was Captain Midnight, right? Or Captain Goodnight?
Midnight.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That was a famous occurrence.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, the Fazios sold their house in 2000 or 2001, according to the internet. So I'm sure this satellite dish was removed by then.
They mounted a DirecTV dish on top of it, and that's
Oh, yeah.
You're right. That was the next
yeah.
step in that, wasn't it?
All right. Well, I'm gonna move on from Julius. You guys can keep.
So let's just tell him the Captain Midnight thing. Brian, do you want to go over what happened? This was in 1986.
Well, the guy hijacked the signal.
Yeah.
And what was it? The New York area, right? Was it the entire HBO? I think it was the New York area. I think it was the
might
tri-state
have been,
area
yeah.
around New York, and he used his technical know-how to get in there and drop a video screen over the HBO signal that attacked HBO for charging $12.95 a month.
Right. He got a $5,000 fine probation. It was before the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act became law in October 1986. So,
how'd they find him?
it says through a process of elimination. Basically, they were able to. There were only so many satellites out there that were possible to stop HBO signal. So
They looked up all the Captain Midnights in the phone book and called them all one by one.
Excuse me. Oh, that's great.
So, this is funny. Odds are that if you live in West Virginia, you might still have one. They were so popular there that they were jokingly called the official state flower. And
yeah.
you can now reuse your C-band dish as a solar powered water heater. and you can turn them into a bird bath or a small pond. So there you go.
It-
Still
it-
got one.
It would make sense though, because cable television
Didn't come there.
only worked
No.
when there was a condensed population
Right.
of people, a concentration of people living in one place. And so until the advent of, JT, you mentioned DirecTV and some of these other smaller, which are prolific when you drive through rural areas. I mean, it seems like every house has a DirecTV dish on it.
Or Prime Star back then.
Yeah, or any of those services that, because cable just wasn't available. And
Right.
even around here, like they wouldn't run. I remember it was a big thing. They would not run it to like residences that were set back. One of them, our church rectory, or the convent and the rectory of our church, which is on a major road, but because they are not surrounded by any residential neighborhoods, they were just Comcast refused to wire them for cable. Like, no, we're just not going to spend the money to lay the cable. and the town council here, the board of supervisors, they had a hearing on. There were like 100 residents who just Comcast would come in every 3 years for their licensing, and they would just say, no, we're not gonna. It's not worth it for us to run it to these people. And like it was a real came to fisticuffs almost between the elected officials and Comcast, because Comcast was so belligerent about it.
Yeah.
And then Verizon came along, shoved it up their patootie with FiOS.
That's right. Oh wow, this is a hoot to go down this path. I didn't think we were.
Yeah, there'll be a whole
This is-
cable television panel at RetroMagic.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We'll get Ted to help out.
Yeah, Ted on TV. Yeah.
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 It's his specialty.
How do we know he wasn't Captain Midnight?
Mm.
Ted, if you're listening, Ted Linhart, you let us know if you ever met Captain Midnight.
He probably
He's in the right area.
He ran the investigation to find him.
He may have.
All right, next up, here we go. Brian, you actually reached out to this person. This is back in November of last year. This is Ross. Ross had a question that's actually kind of, we'll say, current with what's going on at Epcot. He says, sometimes between 2006 and 2010, he recalls a character meet and greet with Figment at Epcot. It was indoors in a detached facility near the entrance to Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. Perhaps it was actually farther away from Imagination in an area now used for festivals. I wish I had the photos, but I have not been able to locate them. For years, friends refused to believe that my family and I met human adult-sized Figment character in Epcot. He says that is until the D23 Expo announced that there's an upcoming Figment coming. Can you share any details on this late 2000s Figment meet and greet?
I can. They took Figment out of the ride when they did Journey into Your Imagination in the 1999/2000 redo that was awful and stoked the ire of fans everywhere. And so the response was to immediately redo the ride and put Figment in every single scene and put out a ton of Figment merchandise, like this odd mouse pad that I have. And I mean, Figment was on everything. And they started this what jokingly gets called Figzilla, this human-sized Figment meet and greet. And the area where Figment met was between the Imagination Building and the Captain EO / Pixar Film Festival today. It has been used in recent years for the Disney Chase Visa exclusive character meet and greet area. But that is where Figment's meet and greet was held from 2003 or so until around 2009, I want to say it was, 2009 or 10. And Figment was removed, and yes, Figment is coming back, and yes, I have confirmed with people in the know that by the time this airs, Figment will probably have already started meet and greets, and it is a full-sized Figment again, that it is not, they did not have a little, like, Baby Yoda animatronic made or anything like that. It's going to be another full-size Figment meet and greet. So
I'd like that Figment because he had stars where his nipples would be on his shirt for no apparent reason. It's very strange.
Hey, man, it's the 21st century. Whatever you're
I know,
into.
right?
Exactly.
Right. We don't ask. And before was that's where there was a Kodak like gift shop there before. So you could get your film and your disc cameras and all your
Yeah.
stuff coming off the ride there. Yeah.
All right. Ross, thanks for that. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate that. Next up is Jason. If you recall, and I don't think I've read this, I could be wrong, but if I did, we're going to reread it because I think this is fun. Jason was the one that wrote us about him finding his dad and his sister in the pictorial souvenir book at Small World. He had a couple more fun facts to tell us, and I thought this was a super fun one. He says in 1970, his dad was doing flight training for the U.S. Air Force, and they flew the T-38 trainer jet from Oklahoma to Florida. He says his dad actually got to fly over the construction site of Walt Disney World. He also says that in 1972, 2 years later, he and his mom honeymooned at Disney World, and they say the Polynesian, his memory is that it was about $79 a night in 1972. Finally, this one speaks to you, Todd. His dad was into lots of filming and editing back then. He says on their trip, he filmed some of the rides as he went through them, but he says it was the most boring film ever, and he vowed only to film with people in the frame after that. Now, here's the problem. He has no idea where this film is now.
Oh.
I know.
Could be some good stuff in there, but all right, we'll let it go.
And
how wrong he was.
Yeah. He's the
It's
early...
the most thrilling piece of film now. In fact, Brian's asked for more Jungle Cruise footage, so we wanted to make sure.
Never have too much Jungle Cruise or parade footage.
Nope, never too much.
One of the rides he did, it says here, was actually some sort of wave machine at the Polynesian. He said it was a boring ride, so he didn't keep the film. That's him actually riding it. I'm just kidding, Jason. But he did share a photo of him with a character meet and greet that was outside of Magic Kingdom, like in the area where the security would be now, kind of there. And he wants to know, they don't do that anymore, do they? Like, that seems kind of rare.
No, they don't do anything like that now. I mean, all of the meet and greets now are controlled and have escorts, but it was very common outside the turnstiles or at the turnstiles to have characters just kind of hanging out and saying hello and having pictures. And we got that one film footage, remember, Todd, from the early years where somebody's awful frisky with Mickey.
Yes,
right
Mickey was he was touching some things. So it wasn't they got frisky with Mickey. Mickey got frisky with them.
So.
Do you mean like in front of the flower?
Yeah.
It was right in front of the train station.
Yeah.
It was
Oh,
a bunch of
yeah.
teenage girls and a little boy or something like that. So yeah.
Oh, I mean, the characters used to be free range, roaming everywhere back in the day, like they are at Disneyland still. So it blew me away. It's like going to Disneyland. You're like, oh, the characters just walk around.
Yeah.
Still?
Hey, look, it's Mary Poppins.
Oh, really? They do? I didn't know that.
Sequestered in areas here.
Yeah. Everything now is the line. Oh, look, you go there and you get in the line and you wait.
We keep them in a cage. Well, it's more of a
right. That's what it practically is. I mean, think about it. You're getting a fast pass now to like meet a freaking character instead of just like having some kind of natural thing.
Yeah,
with them.
yeah. Well, a natural interaction. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
They ripped a ride out for that. That's mind blowing to me. You
Yeah.
know what we're gonna do? We're gonna rip out this Snow White ride so people can meet princesses.
And think about how much space that is. Anyway,
I'm well aware. They could have built a simple structure anywhere else that was air conditioned and didn't cost a lot of money to have people meet people dressed up as animated characters. And
you had a giant lake that was drying up.
Instead,
fit it anywhere.
Instead, we ripped out a classic dark ride. But hey,
right. And a perfectly good movie about Walt Disney. But I guess who cares about who Walt Disney is anymore, right? Yeah, he doesn't have a story.
Big chili eater.
Yeah.
All right, back to the mailbag here. Next up, I thought this was a fun fact. Ken Campbell wrote us, and I feel like this one we might have talked about, but we might not have, but I really don't know, Ken. I'm trying to remember here. And we learned a little bit about this on our tour of Spaceship Earth. We're taking it back to Epcot. Ken actually worked on Spaceship Earth in the 90s. He got to work there with Walter Cronkite and Jeremy Irons, narrators, not actually them working the turnstiles. But he does say
Could you imagine meeting Walter Cronkite? This is Walter Cronkite. Party of two? Please sit down here.
Please note that the floor is moving.
He's just walking. He's one of those people shuffling his feet the whole time on the big record.
That's the way you are.
Yeah.
So he tells us, which I feel like we learned a little bit of this and a little bit of, I recall, tools. He says the spacers in between the cars are actually audio spacers. And he says they supplied the individual audio for 2 cars and they were triggered by infrared beams under the track. And he says as the spacer passed over the beams, it was activated the audio. And then...
I believe, too, I think back then it was tape. And how didn't we hear something that had been converted to some sort of
there was
digital
a tape
no
in that thing, like a literal
think about the size of it. There's
if
it's carrying the audio. See, this is very different than the way that Horizons was done. This is what's so interesting is that you totally can tell that different way Living Seas was done and Journey into Imagination was done. And actually World of Motion. World of Motion was had speakers along the ceiling of the entire ride, and the speakers changed.
No, there's a speaker in your car too.
But wasn't there a lot of overhead stuff too? Maybe I'm just thinking
some.
Maybe I'm thinking People Mover. So, but anyway, just compare Horizons and Spaceship Earth. They're two totally different types of systems, but they provided the same in-car experience.
Yeah, I mean the original Haunted Mansion is done with even a below AM band radio transmitter, and so so when you hit the spot, it would start transmitting audio, and then eventually I think the Horizon system was actually done with infrared light versus that, which was a new GE technology,
right?
And then eventually they probably put CDs in cars at some point.
Yeah, right.
And I'm sure today it's all chips. They're probably just putting SD cards with audio that's triggered in there. So
it's amazing that nowadays you take out all those spacer cars, you could probably increase the capacity by about 10, 20 cars. I don't know how often, or maybe a little less than that.
Okay, next up is from Andrew, our last piece of mail. Dare I say the last piece of mail before Retro Magic. Oh, what I did there. Andrew actually, we'll say, followed directions. He told us about some cooking they've done at their DVC room. He says, wanted to provide some feedback in regards to your last episode about the Disney Vacation Club. You asked about how much use people use of the kitchen amenities during their stays. While I'm sad to report we never did a full turkey dinner during any of our vacations, we would use it occasionally to save money by eating in something simple, whether it be spaghetti or scrambled eggs and toast. We would pack the fridge full of lunch meat to have a quick sandwich when we would come back during midday breaks. It was definitely a nice perk to have a whole condo versus a small hotel room. And my parents were fortunate to buy into it fairly early on versus when they charge for contracts now. Anyway, I hope this provides some insight and look forward to the next episode. Thank you, Andrew. So we're still looking for that
turkey dinner,
unique meal, something you've did the craziest meal. So right now, Andrew's at the top of the mountain with the spaghetti and some scrambled eggs. So
there we go.
Waiting on the honey baked ham or something to be done in there, and not a crock pot. I want that oven fired up. You tell us what you did. All right,
nothing like that studio apartment hitting a 500-degree oven, opening that up on a 90-degree day,
having a hot bowl of chili on your balcony there in July.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, if you have anything to say to us, whether it be a question, a comment, or anything in between, write us, podcast@retrowdw.com. We read them all. We try to get as many as we can on the air. And if you write us, there's a chance you could be in this portion of the next show. Thank you.
All right, well, it's time for our main topic here. Where, as we said at the top, we're going to be talking about the Mickey Mouse Revue. Now, I wanted to get a little... I joked when Hal said we were going to do this. I said, all right, we have to open with explaining the difference between review and review, right? They're homophones in the English language, spelled differently but pronounced the same way. And people will very often misspell review in the way that we're using it tonight. So what is the correct way that we say Mickey Mouse Revue? How would you spell review?
So there are two, as I said, there are two types of reviews. There's the
Correct.
review when you're going over something and checking it. That's an REVIEW. Like
There you
I'm
go.
I'm viewing it twice. It's
You're
a
studying.
review.
Yeah, you're considering it. You're looking back on something or
Right.
giving a critical report. Yep.
Yeah. Then there's the musical variety where you go and you take a bunch of songs that exist and you package them together and put them out as a new piece of work. And that's in the musical sense. Broadway often had reviews in the 1920s. And that's spelled REVUE. And I myself have spelled it wrong and have been corrected on Twitter many, many times. And so...
Well, the etymology of the word is interesting because the review that we're using in the sense tonight, UE, comes from the French word for review, IEW, a show presenting a review of current events. Huh. So the review is a review, is what we're getting at. So Mickey is reviewing something that he already reviewed. It's a review for the review. So we will end it there. I'm sure there are linguistic experts and etymology experts in the audience, and I'm sure they'll weigh in on this, just as like our satellite and cable experts will weigh in as well. So, but how you came up with the idea? This is one of the original attractions, and wow, we haven't done an original attraction in a while. And when you mentioned this, I was like, well, yeah, we have footage of it, not the greatest, but it's got quite a storied history, and there's some history still in Epcot today we're going to talk about. So there's a lot of neat stuff to go through here. So.
Yeah, I went into this thinking it was going to be easy, and one of the challenges I discovered is there's about 2 or 3 sort of primary source documents that are out there about this ride, which have literally been used to death on websites and YouTube channels. And that's pretty much Mike Lee's Widen Your World website, and then Jim Korkis has an interview that he did in a page that he put together about Mickey Mouse Revue, and like literally almost everything out there is based on those 2 things. And so the challenge for me was to do something that wasn't based on those. Although I will have Brian read a little bit of Jim Korkis's interview, because it's very valuable to understand the setup behind this, and I'll give you a little bit of the setup. So this show was the brainchild of a Disney animator named Bill Justice, and Bill had a remarkable career at Disney. He was an animator. He did stop motion animation besides traditional hand-drawn animation. He painted. He did a whole bunch of different things, and at some point he wound up in Imagineering. And one of the things that he did at Imagineering was he was kind of the second guy besides Waithel Rogers to do animation for audio animatronics. So he did Hall of Presidents, he did Country Bear Jamboree, and he was basically like the second expert besides Waithel of audio animatronics and how they work and what they did and how you make them look good. He did Pirates. He did The Auctioneer and Pirates. So very, very experienced with audio animatronics. And I guess somewhere along the lines, it's like he got the idea of doing a show himself, and he felt that there was a gap in what was available as far as audio animatronic entertainment. So Brian, I'm going to have you read a little bit of an excerpt and an interview with Walt Disney that kind of sets this up.
Yeah, this is a clip from our recently departed friend Jim Korkis's book, The Vault of Walt. He has a section on the Mickey Mouse Revue, and he says in the December 31st, 1962 issue of Newsweek magazine, Walt talked about the plans of creating an attraction at Disneyland for, quote, all of the Disney characters so everyone can see them. I have in mind a theater, and the figures will not only put on the show, but be sitting in the boxes with the visitors heckling. I don't know just when I'll do that. Almost a decade later, the Mickey Mouse Revue opened at Walt Disney World. And immediately, Hal, what comes to mind when we hear Walt's description of the attraction?
Yeah, it does. It does sound very much like that and Muppet Vision kind of at the same time, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
Muppet Vision 3D, absolutely, with the heckling in the audience and with the beaker and the cannon behind you. And we fast forward about 8 years,
Yeah.
right?
And so Bill, he probably thought, I'd like to take a crack at doing a show somewhat like that.
He felt they seemed to be getting away from their heritage. That Pirates of the Caribbean was a big hit, but what did it have to do with Disney? What we needed was a reminder of what Walt had accomplished. I pulled out a sheet of paper and got to work. Now I'm going to add an editorial comment here. What we hear now is this endless critique that Disney bases all of their attractions on IPs and doesn't do anything original. And it's funny that an original Disney animator was upset that they were doing original creative, things that were they're creating a brand new IP with Pirates of the Caribbean and the Haunted Mansion and whatnot. And he was upset, and he just thought that they should be doing stuff with, Snow White and Peter Pan and characters from their films.
Wait, I thought the parks didn't have IP all back then.
It's just that it's an endless cycle, I guess.
Yeah, it is.
If only Bill Justice had a Twitter account in the 1960s, he could have dunked on the studios for attractions like Pirates of the Caribbean and the Enchanted Tiki Room. So he said Mickey Mouse would have to be the main figure, yet some mention must be made of our great animated classics. So he sketched all of the characters that he thought should appear, and he called upon his modeling skills to build a 1/16 inch scale paper cutout model of what he wanted. This was before photocopying machines with reducing capabilities, so he had to make all the drawings in scale. Many of the figures had to be drawn 1/4 inch high. The entire set was about 18 inches long by 3.5 inches high, but this model was a good tool for planning the show and experimenting with different scenes. Once he thought he had a winner, it was time for a bigger model, so he recruited some craftsmen, and they built a room-size miniature theater about 12 feet wide. Blaine Gibson and his assistants sculpted all the figures to 1/4 inch scale from his drawings. Everything worked except for the figures themselves. So lighting, turntables, curtains, soundtracks, all of this was in this room here. And when they were done, he notified his bosses. They invited Roy O. Disney to see the results of his work. The show they had in mind was this, that Mickey would lead an orchestra of studio characters through a medley of Disney tunes. Then on the sides of the stage and behind the orchestra, scenes from their most popular animated features would appear one by one. Mickey and his orchestra would close the performance. Roy looked the model over and paid him the best compliment he ever had in his career. Roy said, "This is the kind of show we should spend our money on." And that's how the Mickey Mouse Revue was born.
So there you are. I think it's, as much as people talk about the Magic Kingdom being for kids, I really feel like the key to wrapping your head around this is attraction, that it was made by old people for old people. And if you look at it through that lens, I think it makes a lot more sense than being something for children, because it's all references to movies that kids would not know, that adults and especially older adults would fondly remember. And we'll get into all that, but like this was not. I really don't think the show, even though it had cartoon characters, I don't think this was intended for children. The pace of it was very slow. The colors were very subdued. Let's jump in.
Yeah, and if you remember when they, back then, the only way you saw these movies, they weren't on television or anything like that. The only way you saw these movies, that were some of which were referenced here, was if you saw them when they periodically released them.
Right.
And so it was excerpting things that some people may not have known who the characters were.
Right. Yeah.
Especially kids.
They did show some of these movies on like the Disneyland and Walt Disney Presents shows every so often, but that would have been an episode 1 year, and if you missed it, it's just like missing it at the movie theater. It came around once, and if you didn't see it, you didn't see it. So
when we get to the theater, by the way, there's a little further Bill Justice commentary on the actual design of the theater itself that I want to comment on, but let's set more of it up here.
So it is 1971. You are in the Magic Kingdom. You have, gone around the castle, or if you're lucky enough that there's not a show going on, you've gone straight up the middle of it. You are walking to the carousel. You're hanging a left, like you're going to the Pinocchio Village House. And where PhilharMagic is today is where the Mickey Mouse Revue is. And so the outside of the building was very similar, same kind of tent motif with this, a red banner that said Mickey Mouse Revue, a couple of signs on the side and a couple of open doors and turnstiles. And you walked into the first waiting room, which was very pink and red and Victorian with a lot of hearts and cherubs. And it almost looked like a Disney store took over a Victoria's Secret at a 1980s mall. The colors were very bright and garish, and is a lot of, I'm going to use the word odd a lot because there were a lot of, I think, odd and interesting choices made in this attraction. And this is one of them. The walls were trompe l'oeil painted marble with white Mickey statues painted in alcoves representing different stages of his career. So Mickey's dressed up in costumes with a little museum style plate underneath each one of these with the name and the year of the short film that his style is taken from in this fake statue. So it's got Steamboat Willie from 1928, Two Gun Mickey from 1934, the band concert, him in his concert outfit, the bandleader concert from 1935, him in a polo outfit from Mickey's polo team in 1936. He's in kind of the German Swiss sort of climbing outfit from the movie Short Alpine Climber from 1936. Brave Little Tailor from 1938. In a hunting outfit from The Pointer in 1939. Of course, the famous Sorcerer Mickey outfit from 1940 from Fantasia. And then the piece de resistance is Mickey and Minnie in this big heart shape with cherubs like pulling back things around them from the nifty 90s from 1941. And you walked into this room and there was some background music, but basically it's, you're just standing in this room for 8 or 9 minutes waiting to get led into the next room. And finally, a cast member in an outfit, usually a lady, would stand up and say, "Good afternoon and welcome to the Mickey Mouse Revue. The illustrations you see around you depict just a few of the starring roles Mickey has played throughout his illustrious career. Starting with Steamboat Willie in 1928, Mickey has played the leading mouse in one hit after another, including his most famous role in 1949 as the Sorcerer's Apprentice in Walt Disney's Fantasia. But this afternoon, Mickey dons the maestro's formal coat and tails as the leader of our orchestra, perhaps the most colorful and unusual orchestra you'll ever see. Before the show, you'll enter a pre-show where you'll see a brief movie on Mickey's exciting career and how it all began. Behind the curtain to my left are several aisles. Please move all the way to the end of the aisles, filling in all the available space. We ask you not to sit or lean on the rails. They weren't meant to support the weight of you and your children." How many times did you hear that?
Could you please now say all that in Japanese, Hal?
Yeah. We will get there. We will get there. So now you moved into the pre-show. And the pre-show was, if you remember Stitch or Mission to Mars or any of those shows, you walked into a room with multiple rows of railings in front of you. So you would pick a row and then move all the way down to the left, and except the railings and the walls and everything were painted this like Pepto-Bismol pink. Just solid.
It is bright.
It's a choice.
I joke that you would figure out the like who did the tapestries and the curtains, but I knew you would figure out the curtain color too. Have you Pantone matched it for us yet?
I'll work on that. Work on that. And in front of it was this screen, very wide. It's like a super like bigger than 70 millimeter format. I'm guessing it was probably like a 3 projector show where they projected them all at the same time. Sort of a super wide, skinny format. Film ran about 8 minutes, and it was hosted by the soundtrack character from Fantasia, who talks about. So if you remember Fantasia, there's this one little section where the jazz, one of the orchestra guy plays clarinet, and then this kind of the soundtrack takes over, which is this animated line, which moves kind of like a view meter today. But back then they didn't have that, so they had to animate out that all by hand. And so the soundtrack would sort of talk to you about Mickey's rise to stardom and the innovative use of sound in cartoons, because that was the big deal. That was a key differentiator at that time, was the use of sound. Steamboat Willie was the first use of synchronized sound in cartoons, and Fantasia's Fantasound was one of the first like 6 multi-track setups, and so sound and music were always a huge part of Disney's cartoons, which of course plays into you sitting to watch an orchestra in a few minutes. So they played clips from a lot of his shorts. So if you didn't know who Mickey was, this gave you a good opportunity to sort of get an idea of who he was. And they showed bits of Steamboat Willie in a bunch of his shows. A lot of times the shorts would be arranged kind of in 3 rectangles side by side, except there were like these psychedelic colored and patterned graphics behind them. I guess to keep it, something to keep it modern.
Something hip.
So it'd be these clips, and then all of a sudden there'd be like this crazy 60s thing that'd burn your eyes out, and then some more old-fashioned clips. But, it's great. It's great. And the film ends with a bunch of costume characters pouring out of Disneyland's castle, because, the Magic Kingdom wasn't open yet, so they couldn't film it. They dance together. Yeah. And then they eventually make their way out to the hub, and they join up with some children. And then the announcer says, "Join us in a presentation of the latest colossal effort in Mickey's illustrious career. Mickey Mouse, bigger and better than ever, appears in a completely new dimension, leading his friends in a medley of Walt Disney's musical highlights." So they are hyping you up for this.
It's going to be a rock and roll show.
Oh my God, you just wait. This is going to be insanity in an entirely new dimension.
Only on Sunday.
And then Mickey says, and this is a Jimmy McDonald Mickey. So I don't know who does the worst Mickey, because I feel like that's
I feel like that's the worst Mickey, having just heard it again tonight.
Yeah. It's terrible. But lovely at the same time. God bless you, Jimmy McDonald, for being, who was an official voice of Mickey. Yeah. Like it wasn't as bad as the who's the one that was on the slideshows.
Oh gosh.
Oh, that one was horrible.
Didn't we think that was Jack Wagner?
Or we did think it was Jack Wagner. Yeah. That may be the worst one, but it's
by far it is the worst. Yeah.
It seems weird. And then he says,
"Come along, folks. It's time for the Mickey Mouse Musical Revue."
Apparently they dropped the word musical somewhere.
That was the original title at one point, yes.
Yeah. And that's actually on the poster too.
Yeah.
Which is, again, a freaking weird poster. The poster for this, and I will send this to us so we can put it in the show notes, was designed by John DeCure Sr. and David Negron.
Okay.
And it's this weird, like, Decomp's nude descending a staircase version of Mickey, with like multiple Mickeys, because they're trying to get in the idea of animation, I think. Yes. And like the colors are like, there were choices made. I think it was attempting to be sophisticated, but it's just and it's a painting. It's a rendering of the animated figure himself, the audio animatronic figure, rather than a cartoon version. Very, very strange.
Well, before we leave the pre-show theater, you should get some of Bill Justice's input on this.
Yes.
From Jim Korkis's interviews with him, as the show's theater in Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World was being constructed, someone came up with the idea of having a pre-show. They designed an area just outside the main theater where guests could watch a film on Mickey while they were waiting to enter. Good idea, except there was a glitch. The theater seated 504 people, but the space available for the pre-show could only accommodate 300. Unfortunately, there was no time left to make further changes. It came as a shock when I was told my pride and joy was being moved to Tokyo Disneyland because it never played to full capacity. Of course not. How can you fill 504 seats with 300 people?
There's always space. Nobody ever goes in. There's always a place to sit.
And I think it was, this is where it was so long ago, my memory betrays me. I cannot remember if it was legitimate theater seats, which it very well may have been, or benches like Country Bear Jamboree. But I think it might have been regular theater seats. So if someone has a clear, distinct memory of that, please be sure to write us and let me know. Because I cannot recall.
Well, in Country Bear Jamboree, they have to leave you enough room for knee slapping. So
yeah, that's true. That is very true. So as the kids and characters make their way to the left of the screen, a colorful pink D and ear pattern kind of wipes behind them, which visually leads you to the automatic doors, which open up and allow you to move into the next theater where we get to see the main show. And man, I am ready to go now. This is Mickey in a new dimension. This is going to be exciting and vibrant and vital. This is going to be the best thing.
It's nice because it's 96 out and it's air conditioned. So I'm looking forward
and
to sitting
that
down.
is awesome. In 1971, just the air conditioning is pretty sweet. So it's a big theater, very tall ceilings, and just like the Mickeys were on the wall, kind of like if you think of American Adventure, it's like they had those paintings of Mickeys above the doors as you came in and sat down. So there were 13 rows or so of seats probably. And then in front, just like Muppet Vision, there were 2 elevated box seats, theater boxes that sort of flanked the stage's proscenium. So you'd come in, you'd sit down, and it's like, oh, this is seems like a very fancy theater. Again, pink, bright, pink, red colors used there. When you're sitting down, there's these shiny red curtains with Mickey-styled comedy and tragedy masks and film strips in metallic gold. So you're like, oh, this is fancy. Someone spent some money here. You settle down, and I'm sure someone probably told us, not to use flash photography or eat or drink or smoke. And then you would hear the sounds of instruments tuning up. And those curtains in front of you would part, and then it would reveal kind of these very muted, dark blue curtains behind it. And then a shadow of Mickey would appear on the curtain, kind of from below, aiming up. So he's kind of big, ominous. And then out of the middle of the stage, Mickey slowly rose on a red cylinder, standing, all of 4.5 feet tall. And Bill Justice talked about this Mickey figure in his book in a book called The Paradise Program, travels through Muzak, Hilton, Coca-Cola, Texaco, Walt Disney, and other empires by author Anthony Hayden Guest. Bill told him, Mickey Mouse is the most complicated figure we have ever had, even beyond Lincoln. He has 37 functions, and Lincoln had 32. The key figure in the pirate ride had 17, and the bears, I think the most complicated of those, has got 24. So this Mickey audio animatronic has the most functions, and by functions I mean individual movements. So like a toe tap, an eyebrow, blink, fingers, like each one of those things is considered function. So this is the most complicated audio animatronic they've ever made, and it's only 42 inches high. It's like way smaller than Abraham Lincoln.
If you got thirsty, you could run out and get you a Welch's grape juice.
That's right.
Stand out front.
So he's a little girthy, and I'll say the design, they really followed Bill Justice's drawings, I think, as closely as they could. And he was doing a lot of character art in the 1970s, but he had a very 1970s take on these characters. And the look of it, if for us to look at it today, you're like, that's off model. But that's how the characters were drawn at that point in time. I mean, if it would be like if they had, like, it's like Mickey and Minnie's like Runaway Railway. There are people that like look at that and go like, well, that's not what the character is supposed to look like. But for the 2000s, that's Mickey's style. And for the 1970s, like, this was Mickey style and all the characters style. So the orchestra comes up around him. Now, these characters are grouped by instrument type and also somewhat kind of based on the movies that they're in, but it doesn't use what you would consider to be a traditional orchestral arrangement of instruments. And sketches by Bill Justice show a slightly different arrangement of characters than they were finally placed on the show. So I'm speculating that either Buddy Baker may have made some suggestions to group them based on the arrangements he wrote for the instruments, or maybe just when they set it up at full scale, things didn't look the way that they had anticipated. Daisy was originally supposed to be with Minnie and Professor Von Drake in the string section. She plays cello, so it makes sense for her to be with the strings, but they ended up moving her on the other side of the stage, closer to the brass section in the final version. So something was on there. But she does play in the opening, like, with that group, and we'll talk about how that sort of unfolds. So the characters were also on stools, which moved up and down, and also would turn slightly left and right. So as they are playing, like, they're also raising and lowering in height and turning somewhat, I guess, probably to add a little bit more action to it, because most of the secondary characters did not have complicated movements. They could raise and lower hands to, like, play, bring instruments to their mouths and put them down again, but, like, they didn't blow, or I don't know if a lot of them had eye blinks. They were very sort of rudimentary figures, because with the number of figures in the show, it had to have cost a fortune. And they didn't have a fortune to spend on stuff. So I think they picked and choose, where they would spend their money, as best they could with this. So besides Mickey as the conductor in the center, in the right first row, you have Huey, Dewey, and Louie with pocket trumpets. So they're the brass. And then behind them, you have Monty and Abner from the Country Cousin, the 1936 Silly Symphony, which I don't know how anybody would know who those characters were. Like, those are so obscure characters, but that's who they picked. Then you've got one tier down from them. So next to them, but not connected, is Daisy Duck with the cello. And then right behind behind them are Ka, who plays his own tail. So it's like his tail comes up and he blows across his tail to make the sound of an alto flute. And next to him is Baloo the bear, both of them from 1967's The Jungle Book, and he plays a sea flute. So you can hear the differences between them when they go through the opening song. It's like they get to, like, solos in sections, so you can actually discern what these instruments are. Dumbo is blowing the tuba, but then Timothy Mouse is up, like, pressing the valves for him because he can't play it all on his own. So those two work together from Dumbo in 1941. Now on the left side, you've got characters from Winnie the Pooh. So you've got Piglet with a harmonica, Winnie the Pooh playing a kazoo, and Rabbit playing a slide whistle. And you can imagine how good that sounds. If you just stop and think, what would it sound like if you heard a harmonica, a kazoo, and a slide whistle together? And you're like, yes, that is exactly what it sounds like.
We should have had some instruments ready tonight, because those are all easy to get. We could have played that tonight.
So then on the left second row behind them, we have Minnie Mouse on violin, and then Ludwig von Drake playing a tenor guitar or perhaps a baritone ukulele, but I think it's actually supposed to be a full-size guitar, and that's just something that Disney tended to do, was use baritone ukuleles or tenor guitars in place of full-size guitars, because a lot of bears in the Country Bear Jamborees play 4-stringed instruments instead of 6-stringed instruments. Behind them are Jacques and Gus from 1950 Cinderella. They also are co-playing an instrument. They've got a trombone. Gus blows and Jacques moves the slide back and forth, which is adorable. And then from Alice in Wonderland, you've got 3 characters on one instrument. The Mad Hatter, the March Hare, and the Dormouse are all in a bass clarinet. So the Mad Hatter is blowing and playing the upper keys, the March Hare is playing the lower keys, and the Dormouse just kind of pops out of the horn from time to time. And so I think to understand like the way the scale, you can kind of get an idea of the scale here. It's like all of these characters are kind of scaled to each other's and scaled to the instruments. Then Goofy is playing the double bass. Bode, although in the soundtrack, you can definitely hear someone playing fingered bass, so I'm not sure what's going on there. And then in the back row, we've got the percussion. So you've got King Louie with either a vibraphone or I think it's a xylophone, a timpani, and a couple other pieces of drum kit, which I'm not sure if he plays or not. And then Pluto, who is operating a hi-hat cymbal with his paw. And that's the orchestra. So Todd, you can...
Yeah, so this is just, it has nothing to do with this attraction specifically. It's just something that many attractions have had. You had King Louie playing the xylophone, and King Louie's playing the xylophone about 8 inches above the actual...
Yes!
Or whatever. Are they keys? Would they be keys? I don't know what they are on a xylophone. Yeah, I don't know what the things are that you hit. We'll call them keys. So... I've always had this problem with attractions where Spaceship Earth, he's pounding the papyrus. He doesn't touch, yet you hear, tuk, 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 and he's 3 inches above. So hopefully there might be some other people out there that have. So
he'd wear a hole in it if he touched it.
Well, get it a little closer. You can tune that stuff, so at least give him the illusion. But King Louie is so far up. It's like
a lot of these
like
are
playing the air guitar. Yeah, they're just not there. And I get it but what's interesting is that you're right. You don't want to touch because there's so many repeated movements that there's a wear factor there on the parts touching. But I always felt that these types of things could be brought a little bit closer together to give a little bit better illusion. Or you put things that they're supposedly touching or going to at an angle so there's an illusion that they're closer than they really are.
Well, isn't that the whole way of in the American Adventure when Mark Twain and Ben Franklin shake hands? It's staged and like their hands are still like inches away from each other.
Right. But it's done in a way it looks like it. Yeah. But you're very close to the papyrus man, right? And he's pounding that.
Oh yeah, you're right on top of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt better about the other Spaceship Earth one. Well, they took him down. The one that was at the top scribing that.
Oh, right.
Because that one worked. You knew he was, but from a distance it worked. Anyway, end rant.
Well, the trick with that one was that, and they do this in situations like that. So, you're right. So the thing he was holding was actually attached to the inside of the column.
Exactly.
And so when the hand would move up and down, it was actually the thing.
And you're right. Have been the column moving.
And then when he's using the other hand to like knock it.
Yeah.
You're right. It's all in staging.
But to be honest, his hammer was very far away too. So I had
Michelangelo. I mean, what's going on with that brush?
Well, I give that one a little bit because he could be getting ready to do a brush stroke or thinking. That's a little more.
Hey, I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, exactly. But when you're pounding reed, right, and you're tuk.
There's like a middle school principal who's making sure that there's a good distance between the kids when they're dancing, and they put that person in charge.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, okay. Anyway, I just had to say that I'm sure there's many other attractions where we can think of where things should be, at least a better illusion.
That's a very good observation. So, and likewise, they can't have things too close either, because I was actually reading this interview with Bill Justice, and he mentioned that they can't have hands very close to close either, because there would be rubbing. So you can't have things too far and you can't have things too close.
Right. Yeah, and the things would wear out, the clothes would wear out, the threads, and
which they do anyways. I mean, they apparently have to replace clothes fairly often. So,
and I'm sure they have sewing special patches, on the inside where the wear spots and stuff.
Right.
So, anyway, okay, carry on.
So Mickey spins around and he does a countdown, and the music starts. So we start off with Hi Ho from Snow White, and as each section takes a solo in the song, it's like a spotlight. The lights darken and the spotlights come on to highlight who is playing. And as I said, they kind of work out the arrangements so that way each one of these sections that I mentioned gets a bit of the spotlight through these opening songs, so you can get an appreciation of, you know, the kazoo and the slide whistle and the harmonica playing together, and a little bit of, you know, the bass, the double bass and the other things playing together. So you do Hi Ho, then they play Whistle While You Work from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. When You Wish Upon a Star from Pinocchio. Minnie takes the violin solo here, which is actually very sweet. And that fades into Ka blowing across his tail. He's the solo performer in this one, but it is a very... Buddy Baker, by the way, is the person that orchestrated all this. And man, Buddy Baker loves his alto flutes and does some really sweet arrangements for that. So that part is actually kind of enjoyable in his slower thing. And then they all join in for High Diddle Dee from Pinocchio to end up on a real big up-tempo number. And as they finish, they're lowered down into the orchestra pit, and the entire theater falls into darkness. A white spotlight shines on the curtains on the left with an animated silhouette of the big bad wolf.
And he says, "Sure is dark in here," right?
The wolf sneaking across the stage, and the spotlight moves from left to right across the curtains. And as the sneaking music ends, the curtains pull up and they reveal the three pigs in their brick home, and they sing "Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf?" So Practical Pig is playing his organ, and the Fifer Pig is playing the accordion, and the Fiddler Pig is, of course, playing the fiddle. They sing the song, lights go out, and on the other side of the stage, the lights go up, and you see Snow White, who is holding a bluebird, while a doe and a fawn and 2 squirrels and 2 quails and 4 rabbits and a raccoon are all situated around her, the woodland creatures that love her and she loves so much, with like a little cutouts of some trees around her on a little knoll. And she sings "I'm Wishing" from her movie. And this is the point where we have to talk about the elephant in the room with this attraction, which is the weird human characters. The way the princesses and the humans in this show are depicted as humans rather than cartoon characters. Because for some reason, somebody made the choice to make them very realistic. And in fact, like more realistic in some ways than like the Pirates and Pirates of the Caribbean ever were. It's just weird because you have the cartoon characters are very cartoony, and then the humans are like very human, but scaled down, and it's strange. So after she finishes, the lights come on, and to her left, and it reveals the 7 dwarfs in their cottage. And Sneezy's playing the oboe, Dopey's playing the flute, Grumpy's playing the pipe organ, Doc is playing the lute, Bashful's on an accordion, Happy's on a mandolin, and Sleepy is on the fiddle. And they play a chorus of the silly song, and then they do a verse, and they do a chorus, and then they do another verse, and then another chorus, which is, I guess it's kind of a long song. They have a big yodel at the end. The lights fade down on both Snow White and her forest friends and the dwarfs. And then on the far right, opposite stage, a new scene appears from Alice in Wonderland. And this is a big scene. I want to say the flowers are probably 25, 30 feet tall, some of them. It's really interestingly designed. So you've got Alice, pansies, daffodils, 2 tulips, 2 shy violets, a white rose, a red rose, an iris, 2 morning glories, a dandelion, and a tiger lily. And they do 2 verses very fast of the Golden Afternoon, because it's not a traditional verse chorus song. The Golden Afternoon is like literally at the end of the verse. So it's just like 2 verses and out. 30 seconds, maybe 45, like this very elaborate set for a very short period of time. And then you hear the sound of gunshots as the lights go down, which reveals our friends, the Three Caballeros, Donald Duck playing the maracas, Panchito with pistols, and Jose Carioca playing the guitar. And yes, I said Jose because we all got schooled on Twitter this week about the correct pronunciation of Jose being Brazilian versus versus Spanish, which is Jose, because
Portuguese versus Spanish.
Exactly, because he's Portuguese, he's Jose, he's not Jose. So we say Jose Carioca, and they are standing on their flying serape from the movie The Three Caballeros. Although the design of the carpet does not match the one in the movie. So they start to sing the song, Three Caballeros. And in the movie, of course, this is, I think, one of the highlights of the film. And it is like one of the craziest animated things you've ever seen in your life. If you have not seen The Three Caballeros, at least find this one small section to watch. When the old version of the ride in Mexico, not the original Rio de Tiempo, but the first version where Donald and them show up, there's a bit of the energy of this that appeared at the end, the animated section at the end in the performance dome. But this section is crazy in the movie. It is one of the most entertaining, like wildly animated things I've ever seen. Totally surreal. And so it's a very high energy thing. And so they were trying to get that feel in this attraction. But of course, you're dealing with audio animatronics that, move, but they don't move that much. And they're fast, but they're not that fast. So it's hard to do a real high energy paced things with just the audio animatronic figures. So,
well, I think that's partly why they did what I think you're going to say next, which is how they had a little animation projected across the screen as if they were moving to another side, and then they popped open there. So, yeah, if you watch them, Three Caballeros, you'd be like, all right, it's the same thing over and over.
Right.
So having them and Donald's in one, the other, it works perfectly. It really
they're trying to get that same transformation stuff that happened in the film, but doing it the way that they could do it in 3 dimensions.
I wanted to mention something else too, that you've got that transformation going on, and the Big Bad Wolf, there's the projection of the Big Bad Wolf that you mentioned, and there's another projection later on, I think, when we get to Cinderella here in a second. For people who say that old rides never had projections to tell the story, you're falsely wrong, because this is 1971 and projections were being used, and they were used at the right spot. Now, they're not to the degree that we have today in 3-dimensional, all that, but they were indeed used. As a solo item. I'm not just talking about like the cliff divers at the Mexican ride, but
right. Yeah. One of the great things I think in general about the early Disney rides is the amount of stagecraft that was done. I mean, things were very theatrically staged. I mean, at a very high level, but there was always this kind of, they didn't strive for ultra realism. There was always a striving for stylization, really interesting stylization, but is very theatrical in very many ways. And this is because that's what they were doing. I mean, they were doing, dimensional theater, and the people not only did a lot of the Imagineers have experience doing this for film, it's like they did it for stage too. So
yeah,
they brought all the sounds with them. So they're singing the Three Caballeros, and as you said, Todd, they'll do things like Panchito will shoot his pistol and the stage will go dark, and then there'll be a projected slide, just a single image.
Yeah.
And the way that this works is there's a projector that shines against a mirror, a disc-shaped mirror that has a motor attached to it, and the motor turns the mirror, and then you can get the projector to like just project that light very quickly from one side to the other. So it's a single projector, and then this little mirror on a axis with a motor on it, and it just goes zip, and then it looks like the bullet's going very fast. So the bullet shoots over to those boxes that were the upper boxes that were on the side, and then all of a sudden, Panchito and Jose are in there. They sing a little bit, and then he shoots another bullet, and then it goes zinging over to the other side, and then Donald's in there, shaking his maracas and his butt, and then another shot is heard, and the lights go on, and then Donald's he goes from that side over to the other side. He's on the left side, now he's on the right side. Oh my God, this is going crazy. And I'll tell you, when I was a kid and I went to go see this show, this was my favorite part, because after all this kind of slow paced stuff was like, oh, something is finally happening. It was very exciting in comparison to the rest of the show. I remember thinking the show was kind of dull, and then this happened. I'm like, oh, hey, this is fun finally.
It's also put at a point in the show where you need something to pick me up.
Right.
And you get another one a couple minutes later. It is the show, after the opening and you go through the first two, you're like, okay, I mean, thank God that the Three Little Pigs is fast. But still, you need it here, and it's done well.
And then they do that one more time, and then Panchito and Jose are on it. So there's multiple copies of these characters on both sides of these boxes, and there's turntables. So the same way that, like in Carousel of Progress, there's those turntables on the two sides where they can bring in the different scenes. That's exactly what they did here. So you have the character, they do a turntable, there's another set of characters there, they do a turntable, there's another set of characters, and they can keep it moving and keep it lively, which is really neat. And so with one more shot, the group appears together once more time on the carpet, and then Panchito is just shooting like crazy. And you hear the sound of breaking glass, and then they drop back down into the stage. And then we're at such a high fever pitch of energy. I can't think of a better thing to do than just bring it down a notch. And we see the fairy godmother with Cinderella, and Cinderella, again, hyper realistic human character. She's in her work-made dress, holding a broom and a bucket. The fairy godmother sings Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo, and the fairy godmother has a wand with like a lighted tip, like a couple of incandescent lights to like give it a little bit of a magical wand look. And then the lights go off, and there's kind of this sparkling effect where Cinderella was. And when the lights come back on again, she is in her blue ball gown with her hair done up. And all you can think is, wow, how did they ever do that? When they turn off the lights and then turn the lights back on again and something else is there. That's amazing wizardry.
It was like, what was it? Oh, I think it was around 1988, Beauty and the Beast on Broadway came out. And I remember listening to a radio station in New York, and they were talking about, oh my gosh, we went to see it. We just can't figure out how they did the transformation. We just don't know how they did it. It's like there's an arm behind him lifting him up. This is really not hard. And there's smoke and stuff goes up. Like, it's the other one too. I think it was what's the Korean War play?
Miss Saigon?
Miss Saigon. Thank you. Not Korean War. So Vietnam War. They also, I remember the same radio station at one point. It's like, we just don't know how the helicopter scene is done. We cannot figure it out. It's like there's a giant arm behind the helicopter. I mean, how do you not figure this out?
Right.
Trying to
Again,
get me to go see the show.
Good staging and stagecraft. And you look at things like, there's that beautiful effect in the Pinocchio ride in Disneyland where, oh no, not Pinocchio. No, there is. There's a nice effect with Pinocchio where he comes to life and the character changes using a Pepper's Ghost effect. And the same thing in Pooh, where Pooh comes out of his body.
Floats out of his body,
yeah. So, I mean, it can be done.
Oh, it can.
If you can guarantee the right angle. Obviously, I don't think they could pull that off with the show, so they did the best that they could with the technology they had at the time.
It's a light switch. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good technology. Always works. Only two possible outcomes.
100% reliable.
Yeah.
And so she's done her transformation. Song ends. Spotlight come. Hey, our old friend the Spotlight is back, Todd. And this time instead of the Big Bad Wolf, it's Cinderella and Prince Charming dancing. And they're not even animated. It's like it's literally they shot live action dancers.
I noticed that. It was very smooth and looked
Yeah.
good. Which is interesting because it is quite a departure from the rest of it being animated, the Big
Yeah,
Wolf and all
it's
that. So
in some ways it's a little bit of a callback to Two Silhouettes from I think that was Make Mine Music. But at least they rotoscoped that, right? I mean, it still looked realistic, but it was, I guess in some ways it was a little bit of a nod to some. But it is weird that you're talking about the art of animation, and then all of a sudden
there's live action.
That's just live action. Like, you're not fooling me.
Yeah, they could have traced over it and made animated cells out of it to give a little flicker and a little but
something. And so they play "This Is Love." And then there's these so that's in the middle, and then there's these projected like stills of hearts on the side to like fill up the side space, which is again a choice. The spotlight turns off, and then it turns on quickly, and you've got Brer Fox and Brer Bear and Brer Rabbit, who don't have instruments. Apparently they're the only non-musical characters in this entire cavalcade. They're on stage, right, and they sing a very sprightly version of Zippity-Doo-Dah. And as they are singing this, this is it. This is the big conclusion. So the entire cast comes on for the finale, as tends to be the motif with so many Disney shows. Oh, it's the end. Bring everybody out again. And now you can take your flash pictures. And since it's post Cinderella and Prince Charming dancing, the turntable has moved one more time, and now Cinderella and Prince Charming are together where Cinderella was just by herself up in that section before. So they had to blow the money on building a realistic Prince Charming for the like 30 or 45 seconds that this is on, just for continuity's sake, which is great. Thank you for doing that. Zippity-Doo-Dah ends, and then the group sings the MICKEY part of the Disney, the Mickey Mouse alma mater theme song. The orchestra and the other cast members retreat to their pits and behind their curtains. Mickey stands in the spotlight by himself, and he laughs and he says, "Thank you, folks. This concludes our show." No kidding. We hope you enjoyed it. And then he does a little Mickey laugh, kind of like Pee Wee Herman. And then the curtains close on him. And then that is the end of the Mickey Mouse Revue.
I have a question for JT. JT, you and I, we were in the Carousel Progress once, and you had a little bit of a snooze there. Would you utilize this for a little respite?
It depends on what part of the day it is, but yeah, totally. I mean, we were going full go that day, and I was like, yeah, this is a good spot to nap. Totally.
All right. Yeah.
And then as the doors open up to exit, they play a specially composed medley of Casey Jr., the Mickey Mouse Club March, You Can Fly, You Can Fly, You Can Fly, and A Spoonful of Sugar, which you can actually find on a Tokyo Disneyland music album from 2001. Which
interesting, A Spoonful of Sugar, because that's not the animated part of the movie either. But.
No, but so again, it's
a review. It's a
review. These are what are the best, and I really think they thought, what are the best known Disney songs that people have heard that they can relate to. Let's put them all in there. And this particular song, as also happens with a lot of this stuff, like the original version of the Carousel Progress, when it ends, it's like this crazy 1970s wah-wah guitar rock thing. That they do, because that's how they tended to end a lot of, like, oh, well, not only are we old, we're also very contemporary. So we want to let you know how contemporary we are.
We're hip.
By making something that sounds nothing at all like actual rock and roll. We want to do something that sounds like a 75-year-old's version of what they think rock and roll sounds like.
Right.
So that's the Mickey Mouse Revue. Now, there was some merchandise that came out for this.
Wasn't Squeaky Mickey though? Remember?
No.
We got Squeaky Mickey.
Cotton Jumper.
Cotton Jumper. That goes back to about episode 1, 2, 3, somewhere in there.
It's the early days. Back catalog.
Ephemera memorabilia, yeah.
But they should have. If there was any reason to come up with a Mickey Mouse figure, That would be it.
That would it. Well, okay, so let's talk a little bit about ephemera because a souvenir is back when my grandparents visited Walt Disney World, and I want to say it was 75. They went for the second time because I was born, and they bought back a gift for me. They did have this. They bought back 2 little Mickey Mouse figures and a Minnie Mouse figure. Now he wasn't dressed up in a tux, but they did have figures by that point.
Was it the ceramic kind?
No, they were little PVC rubber.
Oh, okay,
and with movable legs and arms, and the head would go back. I still have them somewhere.
Nice.
I think I only have the Mickey one left. But I remember my grandmother many years afterwards. Whatever happened to the Mickey Mouse Revue? Whatever happened to it? So how you have to answer him. Grandmother's not here with us anymore. But what happened to it? We got to get into that.
We'll get there. Well, let me run through a couple of these other things, and then we'll get to what happened. So
perfect.
You could pick up a little golden book.
Oh, look at
called Surprise for Mickey Mouse, and this book is all about how Mickey gets a letter that he's going to have a show at Walt Disney World, and he's a telegram. They get him a telegram.
Wow,
fancy, right?
That's urgent.
That's the way to get it.
Yeah. Is it good news? Oh, it's great news, says Mickey. Walt Disney World is going to have a Mickey Mouse Revue, and guess who's going to direct the orchestra? You are, laughed Mickey's nephews. That's right, Mickey said proudly. I'll press your best dress suit, says Morty, and I'll get the airplane ticket, says Ferdy. I don't know how Ferdy, being like 7, is going to buy the airplane tickets, but hey.
Well, there was no TSA, there weren't any background checks. He's fine. And by the way, I just want to let everybody know this is how we got let all of our VIPs know they were invited. Brian sent telegrams, Western Union, to everybody, and we had them read. It said, "You are." Yeah, they look at the pictures.
I want you to look at this Minnie Mouse.
Oh my God, she looks like she's taken something.
For some reason.
And she's
hit
running
the
away with
Xanax a little hard there.
Really?
They drew like human lips on Minnie Mouse during this time period.
Why'd they do that?
I don't know.
And look at her eyes are all spaced out.
Yeah, that was the style.
She just rode Space Mountain.
For whatever reason. And so for the rest of the duration of this book, people are just being absolute jerks to Mickey because he's like, hey, I got this great news. I'm in the show. And they're like, yeah, whatever. That's fine. Because really, they're all in on it and they don't want to let him know. But they're basically just like douchebags to him because every time he goes to tell somebody like, hey, I got this great news. I'm going to be in the show. They're like, oh, yeah, that sounds great, Mickey. La, la, la. And so Mickey is like really bummed out. And by the end of the book, he's like really sad. He's on the airplane and he's completely melancholy. And while everyone else is excited.
And then they brought dogs on planes back then too. Huh?
They did. Pluto just gets to ride right up front. Yeah. So they get there and then there's this big ass sign out in front of the castle that says Mickey Mouse Revue this way, which is totally realistic. And then he finally gets on the very like second to the last page, he finally gets to the theater and he finds all of the people that were being mean to him are actually part of the show too. And they didn't want to give away the surprise. And then Donald falls into a bass drum, which is nothing like the show now at all. And that's the hilarious end of that book. There was also a Whitman press out book for the Mickey Mouse Revue. So it's one of those things where you sort of like push out the characters, then you could set them up dimensionally. But it was just it was like characters from the show, but like not in the context of being in the Mickey Mouse Revue. They had like backgrounds like just from their movies, but you could set them all up together. So it was weird that they would make the merchandise, but not actually make it like the show. And there was also a LP. So, remember, like I had the Tiki Room LP when I was little and the Country Bears LP and the Hall of Presidents LP. So you'd think, oh, they must have a record of the Mickey Mouse Revue that you could buy. No, there was a record that came out that year called Mickey Mouse, This Is My Life. It had songs from the pre-show and the main show, but not the actual soundtrack. It's like they just went and got like, oh, we play I'm Wishing from Cinderella, so let's go get that from the soundtrack and like put that on there, but not the version that's in the show itself. So it's very, very weird. Bizarre. Found some good cast member stories from when the show was open in Florida. A guy named Larry Laurie says, one day Mickey rose up in front of the curtain. He turned from the audience towards the curtain and his hand fell off and the red hydraulic oil sprayed all over the curtain. Full house, lots of crying kids. Then the animation folks got up there and the crying really began as they tried to figure out how to clean up the curtain. I think it was closed for at least one additional day. So could you imagine Mickey doing the Saturday Night Live Julia Child thing?
Now I've done it. I've cut the dickens out of my finger. Well, I'm glad in a way this happened. Accidents do occur from time to time in the kitchen. We've never really discussed what to do. First, you must stop the bleeding. The best way is with direct pressure on the apron like so. Now, you want to raise your hand?
A gentleman named Larry Ball says he remembered working on the Mickey Mouse Revue, and one time Mickey was coming up to direct the orchestra. He bowed to the crowd and his head fell off. And he said, "You should have heard the screams from the kids." So apparently that was things happening like that is not just a modern phenomenon. It used to happen in the old days too.
Yeah, everybody didn't have a phone camera on them.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
recording everything.
Just therapy for years afterwards. And then the cast members that worked the ride, they figured out that they could sit in the office right behind the Mickey Mouse Revue and hear the show from there, so they wouldn't actually have to wait out in the theater with you. The cue to get back up and to go out to get ready to get Guess the Exit was when the Cinderella song played. So when you heard the Cinderella song, you got up from the back talking to your friends and you got out and you got ready to.
So they had to sit through
show.
Zippity Doodah like the whole thing.
The whole time, yeah.
Oh man, you had to be ready.
So
I think the cue would be when Zippity Doodah. Anyway.
Yeah. So, well, you got to get to your podium, right? Because if you're not on your podium when that spotlight turns on, that's bad show.
Rather odd.
That's bad show.
It is.
So, Mickey Mouse Revue closed September 14, 1980, a day that will live in infamy. Why? What happened? So, what we know is, we had what Brian said. The reality is that the Oriental Land Company came and did an assessment of all the attractions at Walt Disney World that they wanted to have, in their Tokyo Disneyland. And they felt very strongly that Mickey Mouse Revue was a show that they needed to have in Tokyo. I mean, it's the premier show. It's the number one thing. It's the thing you got to have. But there was a deadline to get Tokyo Disneyland opened. They're in the middle of constructing Epcot at the same time and building all the shows for Epcot. And there just isn't enough time to fabricate a new show and possibly money. Not enough time, not enough money to get a new version of this made for Tokyo Disneyland. And it's a deal or no deal. It's like, if we can't have Mickey Mouse Revue, it's off. We want this that much. And so the decision was made to close the show, strip it, send it to Glendale, refurb it, and then pack it up again and send it off to Tokyo. Wow. And so that's what they did. And so Mickey Mouse Revue was gone.
It's important to note I don't know if you pronounce it kawaii or kawaii, the Japanese cute culture.
Yeah, I think it's kawaii.
Kawaii that took off after, post-war in the 50s and in terms of merchandise and these cute cartoon representations of things. And there is a terrific educational display on it in the Japan Pavilion in Epcot. If you're there next time, make sure you don't just go into the department store, but go into the display area to see it. And that would be one of the main reasons why they were like, we have to have this.
Yeah. And you were telling me, you were reading from something where Bob Matheson was like, he was mad.
So Bob Matheson, who at the time would have been vice president of operations at the Magic Kingdom, but he's one of the guys that was trained in Disneyland and came and helped open Walt Disney World Resort and was a key executive until he retired in 1994, made a Disney legend in 96. Anyway, he in Jim Korkis's book, he mentions that Bob Matheson told Dave Koenig. Dave Koenig, right? He writes a bunch of Disneyland books. That the removal of Mickey Mouse Revue from Magic Kingdom was a very big fight. They screamed like crazy on that one. It was a very popular attraction, and it was so much of their culture. It was what people really loved, but they didn't have time to build their own, so they had to take the one from Florida. And so they, disassembled it and shipped it over there. And when it opened, by the way, it was an e-ticket attraction in Magic Kingdom, and by 1980 it had been downgraded to a D ticket attraction.
Even that seems a little. I would have guessed C, but
Well, I mean, I guess as you opened Pirates and Space Mountain, and
Right.
it's a comparison thing,
Right.
Yeah,
Big
it's air
Thunder
conditioned
and-
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was during that period of time when tastes were kind of shifting within visitors, and they were expecting more thrills and more excitement.
And if you remember, I know we've probably touched on it in prior podcasts, but that Sully Sullivan is, who was also at one point a vice president of all the parks, and he said that's why they did away with the tickets when they opened Epcot, because you had these sponsors sponsoring these attractions, and everybody wanted to sponsor an e-ticket. And so when you tell them, like, well, no, you're sponsoring this one's going to be a C ticket, they felt like, well, it shouldn't cost me as much as Kodak's paying for its e-ticket journey into imagination over there. So their solution was to do away with the ticket books altogether and go to a one-price ticket, which I think last time I checked was $372 a day and a kidney now to get into the parks.
So it's in Tokyo. It plays in Tokyo into 2009. So it had a good run there. Ironically, it was also replaced, just like today, PhilharMagic is in that space. PhilharMagic is in that space in Tokyo as well. Of course, we had a few other shows in between. We had Magic Journeys, we had The Legend of the Lion King, but it is really kind of nice in a way that Mickey's PhilharMagic is in very many ways the modern incarnation of the Mickey Mouse Revue. Same basic concept of a character sort of leading everybody through a retrospective of Disney music featuring the characters. So it's funny, as much as things changed, things kind of ended up right back at the beginning of where they were.
One of the things about this attraction was that it was the only Mickey Mouse attraction. Disneyland didn't have one, correct? There was no attraction in Disneyland with Mickey Mouse in it. So it was a big deal that Mickey was in this attraction. And aside from his cameo when Waldo's impersonating him and when they drop him into stuff at MGM Studios, little film clips where he's doing custom things, he really wasn't in another attraction until I remember that was the big deal when they announced Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, was he was finally going to have an attraction again, such as it is.
Now, one place that did have nice merchandise was Tokyo. And in fact, they're doing a similar program to like the 50th here. They're doing like a 40th. And they just came out with a version of that curtain. The like Mickey, like the comedy and tragedy curtain that you can put in your own house that is of the same style, printed on polyester. And I don't know what the market is for that, but it's amazing that they would come out with that. At first I thought it was like a shower curtain, but it's actually the warnings. I translated the warnings on it, and just like, you can't let it be wet for too long, or I guess the dye comes off. So I don't know where else in your house you would use a curtain like that, but I thought that was pretty cool.
Well,
that they
clearly on your stage.
Right, exactly.
Or between the dining room and the kitchen, you can just go through
Mhm.
food come back through.
That, draped walls were a thing and still are in some places where you just have the drapes along the wall.
That's
hiding
true.
a
That's
solid
true.
wall. So
And this attraction also has a little bit of a legacy. So characters were pulled from these molds and used in several other attractions at different parks over the years. Um, Allegedly, the Alice in Wonderland at Disneyland has several characters from this. The post-rehab Snow White's Adventures at Disneyland at Walt Disney World had the dwarfs from there, and even today, like some of those dwarfs from Seven Dwarfs Mine Train are pulled from those same molds that were developed for the Mickey Mouse Revue. The audio animatronic Mickey currently resides at the Walt Disney Archives. He was put on display at the D23 Expo in 2011. And 3 of the many animatronics of Donald, Jose, and Panchito were, at this point, not so recently put on display. Oh, sorry, they were put on display at D23's Destination D in the 40th. And then in 2015, they were redressed and placed into the finale of the Epcot Grand Fiesta Tour after it was refurbished. So
very excellently too, by the way, because if you were coming, that was in the era of Disney Twitter when we were all kind of there, and it was one of those things where that attraction, when you got to the end, there was a film of them, and then just one morning, somebody went on the ride first thing, and suddenly the film had been replaced with the 3 characters from Mickey Mouse Revue. It was an unannounced plussing, and
yeah,
it's so neat when I ride by them every time. I just look at them and think, wow, they were here in 1971 doing that stuff.
And they did upgrade them a little, because the original characters, those in particular, it's like they were just flat. They didn't have, and they redressed them with like feathering. So they feathered them where they weren't feathered before.
They did, but I do recall, I don't know if it was Jason Grant or who said that the guts of the animatronics are the 1971 originals, that's how well built and how well they held up and were maintained, that they did not have to put new animatronics or anything in there. Like that is the originals there.
That's great. And I think those are all, I'm trying to remember if those particular animatronics were built in Florida or if they were built at Mapo in California. They might have been built in Florida. So well done, guys. So
yeah,
fondly remembered, but not forgotten, for sure. And I thought this was going to be a quick episode, and it certainly did not turn out to be a quick episode.
Well, we got into satellites, and anytime you get into satellites and cable TV hijacking, like God knows where it's going to go.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed the show.
Well, thank you very much, Hal, for putting that all together. I know this is a fun look back at something like this. I think we had been talking about doing this episode for years. So, like I said at the beginning, it's fun to go back to an opening day attraction and still being able to see a little bit of it left today. As we mentioned also in the beginning, Retro Magic is coming up. And for those of you attending, or those of you that may not be able to attend but are going to be in the Orlando area, JT, you have an adventure that we've partnered with for this event.
Yeah, so I mean, what's cool is I guess you kind of just sort of said something I didn't think of. I guess if you're looking to participate in the events of the weekend and you didn't get your ticket or something like that, or if you are coming and you want to participate in Mouse Adventure, which their website's mouseadventure.com. They have created a Walt Disney World based scavenger hunt. You get some friends together. They got trivia. You're running all over the place. It's going to be something else. Vintage stuff, retro stuff, all in there. They're going to be set up with us Saturday throughout the day. We'll give you more details when that comes out. But to get started, check out mouseadventure.com. We're working with them on this fun little add-on that they wanted to bring to the weekend. So
awesome. Thank you very much for doing that. All right. Well, as always, we thank all of our listeners. If you can, give us a shout out on iTunes or your favorite podcasting app. And as always, you can support us at going to lbvhistory.org/donate. And also check out retroww.com/support us. We'll take you to our online TeePublic store. for all those great designs that Hao and others have done for us. So, Hao, I'm sure after we get through all the retro magic art you're working on,
we actually have a new one.
The Dolphin Resort.
It was, whose suggestion was that? Was that yours, JT?
We were talking about, I think Brian, it was a group effort. Probably, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know who had.
I think it was JT's idea of like, hey, let's revisit some of the legends. And so one of the legends that we love is that those black squares in the Swan and Dolphin Hotel are for monorails to go through.
No, that was the station. Was it like it was going to go, or was it going to shoot out of it?
Yeah, like it's just, you would stop there, hundreds of feet in the air, and you'd get in the monorail, and then if it ever broke down outside, I don't know what you would do. But
well, they left it black too because they just didn't, you know.
Right. So what I did is I looked at the old, there was this logo for the Contemporary Hotel that was from the 1980s that has the monorail coming out of the Contemporary, and basically redrew the Dolphin Resort in that style with the monorail coming out of it. So that's at our TeePublic store now. It is that Contemporary Hotel take on the Dolphin Resort with the monorail coming right out of the middle of it. So
that's a deep cut. That's, I mean, you could wear that shirt and be a Dolphin or Swolphin fan, and people would be like, what's going on there, if they even notice it, and you could keep that legend going. Just like, the monorail used to come through here.
All right, well, thank you, all our listeners. Appreciate it, and we will be back next month-ish after Retro Magic with a new episode. Thanks for listening, and with that, Brian, take us out.
Follow the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society on Twitter and Instagram at LBV History, and on the web at lbvhistory.org. For all things Retro Disney World, including exclusive merchandise, visit us on the web at retrowdw.com, and on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at RetroWDW. And follow our hosts, Todd McCartney, on Twitter at WDWMS, Hal Bowers on Twitter and Instagram at GoAwayGreen, JT Cougar on Twitter at LS1JT, and on YouTube at Rubber City Motoring, and on the web at rubbercitymotoring.com. And you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Brian P. Miles. Retro Disney World is the monthly podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society, a nonpartisan, nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 organization, and is not affiliated in any way with the Walt Disney Corporation or any of its subsidiary or affiliated entities.